The moment the bond becomes real, something in them shifts, not away from you exactly, away from what the bond makes possible, away from the specific vulnerability of having allowed someone to matter enough that their presence shapes the interior and their absence would cost something genuine. The running is not about you. That needs to be said at the start because the experience of being run from has a way of feeling like a verdict, like the specific qualities you brought, the specific love you offered, the specific version of yourself you were in the relationship have been evaluated and found insufficient. The running feels personal. It is not personal. It is a nervous system responding to a threat signal. And the threat signal is not you. The threat signal is the bond itself, the realness of it, the depth of it, the specific and undeniable fact that something has formed that was not there before, something that creates stakes, creates exposure, creates the possibility of a loss that could not have existed before the bond did. What the bond actually triggers. The avoidance attachment system was shaped in an environment where closeness was associated with cost, not always obviously, not always through dramatic events, often through the accumulated, quiet, daily experience of emotional needs being met with absence or dismissal, or the specific kind of discomfort that communicates, your interior is more than I can hold. That early experience did not teach the avoidant that love is bad. It taught them something more specific and more lasting. That the exposure of genuine attachment, the specific vulnerability of actually needing someone leads to pain, not might leads. The lesson was experiential, repeated, installed before the avoidant had the cognitive framework to question its accuracy. And experiential lessons do not respond to logical revision. They respond to new experience that contradicts the old prediction. Until that new experience accumulates sufficiently, which requires sustained, deliberate, supported work, the old lesson runs, automatically, below the level of conscious choice. The bond triggers the lesson triggers the alarm. The alarm triggers the running, not because you were wrong about what you felt, because the avoidant has not yet developed the capacity to stay in what they feel when what they feel reaches the depth that genuine bonding produces. The specific moment the running begins. It is rarely the moment you would expect. It is not typically a fight, not a moment of obvious incompatibility. Not a situation where something genuinely went wrong that provides reasonable cause for distance. It is often the opposite, a moment of unusual closeness, a conversation that went somewhere real, a moment when the avoidant said something or showed something or allowed something to be visible that they do not usually allow visible. A moment of genuine meeting where both people were actually present, actually in contact, actually known by each other in the specific way that genuine intimacy produces. That moment is when the alarm fires, because that moment is when the bond crossed the threshold, when the stakes became real, when the interior that the system was designed to protect became genuinely shared. And the distance that follows that moment, the cooling, the withdrawal, the managed return to a safer level of closeness, is the system doing what it does when the threshold is crossed. The running begins precisely when the bond was most real. That timing is disorienting, feels like betrayal. Feels like the depth of the moment produced the rejection rather than the bond producing the fear that the fear produced the distance. The moment was not the cause. The moment revealed the depth of the bond, and the depth of the bond activated the alarm that was always going to activate at that depth. What the avoidant experiences while running. The running does not feel from the inside like fear. The avoidant is not aware in most cases of experiencing fear. The alarm does not announce itself as an alarm. It produces rationalizations. The mind generates reasons, real feeling, plausible, sometimes entirely accurate reasons for why the distance is appropriate. Why the relationship was moving too fast, why something about the dynamic was not quite right, why this specific person, however genuinely good, is not the right fit. These reasons are not entirely fabricated. They are assembled from real materials, real observations, real differences, real complexities, but they are assembled for a purpose. The purpose is to convert the running from a fear response into a decision, to make the distance feel chosen rather than driven. The avoidant running genuinely believes the reasons much of the time, is not consciously aware of the gap between the stated reason and the actual mechanism. The rationalization is not cynical. It is the mind doing what minds do when they need to protect the self from a truth that is uncomfortable, finding the version of events that makes the behavior feel like wisdom rather than avoidance. Underneath the reasons, underneath the rationalizations, underneath the constructed narrative of why the distance is appropriate, the bond is still present, unchanged by the running. Waiting in the interior like something that was stored whole rather than processed, what the running costs the avoidant. This part receives less attention than it deserves. The running costs something, real, specific, not immediately visible something. It costs the bond, which was real and which the running does not dissolve, only distances. The avoidant who runs does not stop feeling the bond. Stops being in contact with it daily. The difference is significant in terms of alarm management. It is not significant in terms of the bond's actual presence. The bond stays, lives in the interior, surfaces in the unguarded moments, returns in the specific, involuntary way that things return when they were stored whole rather than processed. The running costs the nourishment the bond was providing, because genuine bonds provide something that self-sufficiency cannot replicate. The specific quality of being genuinely known by someone who remains, of being accompanied rather than simply being present in one's own company. The avoidant solitude after the bond is quieter than their solitude before it. Has the specific quality of something having been removed rather than the neutral quality of simply being alone. The running costs future moments of the specific quality of connection the bond produced, because the bond, allowed to deepen rather than being interrupted by the running, would have produced more of what the unguarded moments already held. More genuine meeting. More of the specific aliveness of being with someone who is actually real. The running prevents that, and the avoidant in the distance lives with what the running prevented, not always consciously, as the specific texture of a life that has something missing where the bond was. Why understanding this does not fix it. All of this is accurate, the mechanism is real. The running is fear rather than verdict, the bond persists through the distance. The avoidant pays a cost that is specific and genuine. Knowing this does not change the pattern. This is worth saying plainly because the temptation, having understood the mechanism accurately, is to believe that the accurate understanding produces something. That if the avoidant only understood what was driving the running would stop. That if the person being run from understood that the running was fear rather than rejection, the impact would be different. Understanding helps. It removes self-blame. It restores the accuracy of perception about what was real. It allows grief to be honest. These are real and significant values. But understanding does not rewire the nervous system, does not change the alarm threshold, does not install the capacity to stay in the bond when the alarm fires at the depth that genuine bonding produces. That capacity is built through different work, through the slow, experiential, requires repetition process of feeling the alarm and staying anyway. Of discovering through accumulated experience rather than through understanding that the bond does not produce the catastrophic loss of self that the alarm has always predicted. That work belongs to the avoidant, cannot be done for them, cannot be inspired into them through patience or understanding or the quality of love brought to the relationship. It is entirely theirs. And whether they are doing it, whether the recognition of what the running costs is being converted into genuine engagement with the pattern, is the only variable that determines whether the bond ever becomes something that can be lived in rather than something that keeps being run from. What you do with this. The bond was real, the running was fear. The cost is genuine on both sides. And your life, the actual present tense happening in real-time life that exists independently of the avoidance pattern and their work or lack of work on it, is also real. The honest question is not whether the bond was real. It was. The honest question is what the bond being real obligates you to, not to wait indefinitely for the work that only they can do. Not to remain available for the loop of running and returning that the unaddressed pattern produces. Not to hold your life in suspension pending the conversion of their recognition into genuine change. The bond was real. Your life is also real. Both things are true. And the life, yours, completely happening now, does not require the avoidance readiness to be worth living fully. That is the honest end of this, not the hope that understanding the running will stop it. The recognition that your life is available to you now, fully, regardless. The running has been described, its mechanism, its cost, what it produces in both people, what interrupts it. What 3,000 more words can honestly do is go somewhere this conversation has been approaching, but not quite arriving at directly. The thing that doesn't get said about the bond. The bond was real, this has been established. The running was fear, not verdict. The avoidant felt what you felt. The connection was mutual. These things are true. And there is something else that is also true, that tends to get less attention because it is less comforting, and that deserves honest examination. A real bond with someone who consistently runs from it is not a relationship. It is a bond. It is real. It is significant. It carries genuine weight and produces genuine feeling and leaves a genuine mark on both people. But a bond by itself is not a relationship. A relationship requires something in addition to the bond. It requires presence, consistency, the daily, ordinary, not always dramatic showing up that constitutes being actually with someone rather than feeling something for them from a distance. The bond without the presence is a real thing that is not the thing you need. This distinction matters because the reality of the bond, however validating, however clarifying about the mutuality of what was felt, can function as a reason to continue waiting for the presence that the bond implies but has not produced, as though the realness of the bond is a promissory note, as though it guarantees that the presence will eventually arrive. As though love that is real is love that will find its way to expression if enough time and patience are extended. Love that is real does not automatically become love that is expressed, does not automatically become love that is present in the daily, practical, shows up on Tuesday sense. The gap between feeling and capacity can be enormous and can remain enormous indefinitely if the work that closes it is not done. The bond being real is not the same as the relationship being available, what waiting for the running to stop actually costs. Most of what is lost to the waiting is not visible while it is being lost. It does not announce itself as loss. It simply accumulates quietly in the background of a life that is functioning and forward-appearing and nonetheless not quite fully inhabited. There is the loss of present-tense connection, the specific, nourishing, available right now quality of being genuinely accompanied by someone who is actually present. Every day that is spent waiting for the avoidant to do the work that would make them available is a day not spent in the specific quality of connection that is actually sustaining. There is the loss of genuine investment in relationships that are actually present. The people who are available, consistent, capable of the reciprocity that sustains, these people receive less than they would receive if the primary emotional investment were not allocated elsewhere. Less genuine presence, less full quality attention, less of the specific, extraordinary empathic capacity that the person who loves an avoidant typically has in abundance. These relationships can be maintained at a functional level, but they are not receiving what they could receive, and they are not providing what they could provide because provision is proportional to investment and the primary investment is elsewhere. There is the loss of genuine self-development. The becoming that is available when the primary energy is not going toward the navigation of a dynamic that is not moving. The questions about your own life, what you want, who you are becoming, what you are building, that do not get the attention they deserve when attention is primarily organized around someone else's readiness. These losses are real, they are not dramatic. They do not feel urgent, they accumulate in the way that slow leaks accumulate, not visible until the moment they are, and by then they have been running for a significant time. The difference between hope and suspension. Hope is not the problem. Hope that the avoidant will do the work, that the bond will eventually find its way to expression, that what was real between you will become livable. This hope is understandable, is human, is not in itself the thing that costs you. The suspension is the thing that costs you. Hope that coexists with genuine forward motion is not suspension, is not the thing that drains the life. Someone can genuinely hope for something while also genuinely investing in the life that is available to them now, can carry the love that refuses without making the carrying into the primary organizing principle of their daily existence. Suspension is when the hope becomes the condition, when the life is being held pending the hope's resolution. When the genuine forward motion is not happening because the primary orientation is toward the question of whether the running will eventually stop. Suspension looks different from person to person. For some it is obvious, the explicit waiting, the life visibly on hold. For others it is subtle, a life that appears to be moving while something essential in the investment is withheld. The forward motion is present but not quite complete. The engagement is real but not quite full. Something is being held in reserve, kept available, not quite released. That something is the primary investment, the fullest quality of presence, the genuine, nothing held back occupation of your own existence, and it is being held in reserve for a future that only the avoidant can determine. That is the suspension, and the suspension is what deserves honest examination, not because hope is wrong, but because the suspension is costing something real every day it continues. What the avoidant needs that is not yours to provide. The avoidant who runs when they feel the bond needs something specific to stop running. They need the experience of staying while the alarm fires and discovering, through accumulated experience, that the bond does not produce the catastrophe the alarm predicts. This experience cannot be provided by the person they are running from, not because you are insufficient, because the nature of what is required is incompatible with the relational dynamic that currently exists. The person doing the running cannot simultaneously be practicing staying with you while you remain available for the running. The dynamic that needs to change is the one being maintained by the continued availability. What can provide the required experience is a therapeutic relationship. A skilled therapist working explicitly with attachment patterns can provide the specific, consistent, boundaried presence within which the avoidant practice is staying, can provide the relationship in which the alarm fires at manageable intensity and the staying is practiced until the nervous system accumulates enough evidence to revise its prediction. This is slow work, nonlinear. Requires genuine commitment from the avoidant to the process, not just the understanding of what the process requires. It is also the only reliable path to the change that the bond's realness has been suggesting is possible, not your patience, not your continued availability, not the quality of the love you bring or the accuracy of your understanding of their psychology, their work. In their own therapeutic relationship, on their own timeline, for their own reasons, that is what is needed, and it is entirely outside your ability to provide or accelerate. What you can actually do. Given all of this, given the realness of the bond and the reality of the running, and the fact that the work required to stop the running belongs entirely to the avoidant, what is actually available to you, more than it might initially seem. You can grieve what was real without accepting the loss as a verdict about your worth. The bond was real, the loss is real. The grief is appropriate and honest and deserves the full respect of being felt rather than managed into something more comfortable. And the grief can be directed at the loss rather than at yourself, which is the distinction that determines what the grief builds. You can restore the accuracy of your own perception. You were not wrong about what was there. The bond was mutual. The connection was genuine. The moments of real meeting were real. You did not imagine or project or construct from wishful thinking. You perceived accurately. That accuracy deserves to be reclaimed from the self-doubt the dynamic tends to install. You can invest genuinely in what is actually present. The relationships that are available and reciprocal, the work that is yours. The questions about your own becoming that deserve real attention. The daily, ordinary, nobody's watching life that is happening regardless of what the avoidant does with their running. And you can make an honest decision about how long to remain available for the loop, not a dramatic decision, not a statement or a declaration or anything that is designed to produce a particular response. Simply the honest, private, for your own sake determination of whether the availability is serving your life or whether the most genuinely self-respecting thing available is to direct your investment fully toward what is actually here. That decision is yours. It does not require the avoidance input, does not require their acknowledgement of what the running has cost. Does not require the bond to be smaller than it is, or the love to be less than it is, or the hope to be extinguished as a condition of moving forward. Simply the honest determination of where your genuine investment belongs, and the courage, if the determination points in the direction of your own life, to actually put it there, fully. Without the reservation that has been held in place by the hope, not because the hope was wrong, because your life, actual, present, genuinely available, is worth the full quality of everything you have been holding in reserve. It has always been worth that. It is worth it now.